Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man tabi'a sunnatahu ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome again to another episode of your weekly Islamic chat show, Guest of the Week, coming to you from Sharjah Television. As always, I'm your host Ismail Bullock, and as always, inshallah, we will go through one of the important topics that relates to many of us in our daily lives. So we've touched in the past very briefly about the importance of having halal income, income that is permissible in Islam, not derived from unpermissible actions or products or etc. So today we're going to go into a bit more detail, kind of a step-by-step into this. And to do that with me is brother Muhammed Khan. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair for coming on.
Barakallah.
Now, as I mentioned, as we know, obviously Islam is a complete way of life. So we have many rules and regulations and ayat of the Quran, verses of the Quran and ahadith, statements of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that give us direction on how to act and in our daily lives. So one of those things is in relation to our income, how we earn our money, and various things that we may come across while working or while having business. So we're going to go through some of those today.
Yes, alhamdulillah. As we know that Islam is a wholesome religion, and it gives us, guidelines for, in fact, everything from our cradle to the grave. Like, what are we supposed to do? Whether it's our dealings, business transactions, and getting married, or studies, work, whatever, everything, Islam gives us guidelines. And this is the beauty of Islam. And this is what has attracted even a lot of non-Muslims to accept Islam. That Islam is not just, as merely translated, a religion, but it is a complete way of life. And one of the aspects which we're going to discuss today is about business ethics in Islam. And when we see this subject, subhanAllah, we will be surprised that from the intricate details of business transactions to the basics, to the something where organizations deal, where a client and customer is involved with our organization, or the world economic system, everything is described in Islam, and we get the guidelines from Islam. And this is what we need to understand, because this is a subject where we all are involved on a daily basis. Say someone is involved, maybe he has inherited businesses from his grandfathers. Someone might be a youngster who is just pass out and he wants to start up his own business. Someone can be doing some marketing or sales job, but again, he's involved into certain financial transactions. So for us, number one, as human beings, it's very important that we know what is good for us and the society in general, and what will bring us benefit. As Muslims, it is very essential for us to know where does the money come and where does it go. Where does the money come from and where does it go? And what are the dealings which we are involved in?
What's interesting to point out here is this kind of knowledge can become obligatory on a person. We know Islamically that there's certain knowledge that is obligatory upon every individual, and there is certain knowledge that is obligatory in a certain situation, and there is certain knowledge that is obligatory only upon a certain group of the Muslims. So, for example, every Muslim has to learn the basics about Allah, faith in Allah, the oneness of Allah, how to make wudu, and these things that's related to their everyday purification that they come into. If they then become very wealthy and they have savings, it becomes obligatory upon them to learn the rules and regulations of zakah. If the person has enough money and is financially, physically able to go to Hajj, then he has to go to Hajj. He has to learn the rulings of Hajj. For example, which most of us are, it's applicable to us, the fasting of Ramadan, we have to learn the rulings of Ramadan. So likewise, when someone goes into business, it's not enough for him to say that I don't need to know, or just go into business. As soon as he's going into a business, setting up a business, being a partner in a business, whatever it may be, like you said, inheriting it, it becomes obligatory upon him then to know the do's and don'ts Islamically in business.
That's right.
Otherwise, he'll be blameworthy. If he falls into the forbidden without realizing, he will still be blameworthy for his ignorance because he didn't try to educate himself when he went into business to see, is this kind of dealing permissible? Is this kind of income? Is this kind of product? Is this kind of whatever it may be? Is it in line with the Islamic regulations?
That's right. And nowadays, we see there is this rise in entrepreneurship, and you have top-notch universities, designing programs around entrepreneurship. You have a lot of countries who have these entrepreneurship programs, where youngsters, they're more encouraged to take up, startups and to do their own thing rather than just, going out and hunting a job. However, with having said this, our responsibility in learning about what's right and what's wrong is also more, because now this is on the rise. And if we see, according to the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, a business is a productive organization, an organization whose purpose is to create goods for sale, usually for a profit. So this is in general, defined as business. Business is also an activity. One entity does business with the other. So in business, a couple of entities or more than that are involved with each other. And then you have an entity which is involved with the customers, or you call them the clients. Now, what our focus is about the ethics in business, and questions on business ethics is very essential and relevant to everyone. This is because every one of us are engaging into it, and it's very relevant to all of us, whoever is involved into businesses, because we need to realize that as human beings, we have a social responsibility towards our society. This is something, when we understand this, we will take the correct route. Because as human beings, we have a social responsibility towards our community, our society, our family members. So when a person, wants to start a business, he must see that whatever he's doing, is it ethically correct or no? He must see that will this benefit the people? And he must see, is there any type of fraud or any type of deception involved into it? And these are just few things we'll discuss in details. However, he must consider what is ethical and what is not. And now, again, when we come to the question of principles and ethics, because principle and ethics, they determine the successful running of an economic system. It's the principles and ethics. And we see that recently, in the past 20 or 30 years, this subject of business ethics has evolved. And in one of the Harvard Business Review, one of the persons by the name of Andrew Stock, he wrote an article where he mentioned, that's in the early 1990s. He said at that time, more than 500 courses have been designed by the Institute just on business ethics. And he said there are more than 25 textbooks just by this title of business ethics.
So this shows us then that business ethics is something that is definitely needed and required, and people need it. So that shows you at the same time that there are people who are using or doing bad business and bad business practices and don't have ethics in business. Hence, they're creating all these courses. And we'll obviously, as we'll see from today's episode, we have a lot of essential business ethics already there in Islam. In fact, like I always say, when we go back to a lot of these ethics that are now pushed out now in business, in communication skills, in how to live a happy life, a lot of the statements they push out, they are actually identical, and they may even not really know this, that they themselves got it from books of other books from like 50 years ago that eventually took these back from the hadith anyway. And I remember we had a guest before who was a British lawyer, and he mentioned that even in the Western legal systems of many different countries in the West, a lot of their rules and regulations that they implement until now were taken from the Ottoman Empire fiqh books. And we know that the books of fiqh, Islamic jurisprudence, are taken from the Quran and from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammed, and from what the scholars have derived, rulings have derived from the teachings of both the Quran and the Hadith. So we find a lot of these things that are being taught in these modern day business ethics, do this, do that, act like this, don't act like this, we'll find that they go back. We can find them in the the Sunnah anyway. But unfortunately, a lot of us now, we don't tend to look back towards those things. Right. We don't say to ourselves, let's look at the book of business transaction in Sahih al-Bukhari, for example, or whatever it may be. Or let's look at this well-known classical book, which is like 3 volumes that talks about business transactions. We automatically go to the latest such and such to look for these things, and we find, which is no problem. But at least first, check, and you'll be surprised. A lot of these ethics, if not more ethical, more honest, more just, will be found in the teachings from the ayat and from the hadith.
That's right. And when we see that today, almost all the business schools, they have like 100%, they have this subject of business ethics. And when we go to the definition of like what is ethics, because it's important for us to define, as to someone might say, yeah, I'm doing ethically, I'm doing my business ethically, but perhaps he might be falling into the wrong. So if you see, according to Cambridge Dictionary, what are business ethics? This terminology, it means principles, rules, and standards defined to know what is morally right and morally wrong. This is the definition of Cambridge. Now, when we say the business ethics in Islam, they are defined by the Quran and Sunnah, by what is there in the Quran and Sunnah. And of course, we also derive from Ijma and Qiyas. And these are our principles where we derive our principles from. So ethically, something might seem to be okay with a person. Say, for example, someone wants to come up with a beautiful brand or beautiful brand of, say, alcohol. He packages it well. He doesn't, deceive anyone. He gets the bottles from, some good country.
Recyclable glass.
Everything okay. All the standards met, certifications. But ethically, according to Islam, it is not permissible. And this is where, we draw the line. That we have to go back to the authentic source. And it's only logical. It's only logical that our Creator knows best what is ethical. Because now let us also know that these ethics which are defined by, top universities or business schools or whatever, these are as per their understanding, their background, their academic background, and so on and so forth, their experience. So we say business ethics are not just defined by, say, some entrepreneur who's a billionaire or who made it like at the top. We say business ethics are defined by our Creator, because He knows best. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows everything, what's coming in future, what was there before. Everything is known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is Al-Hakim, and He defined it for all of us. This is the ni'mah, this is the blessing of Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just didn't leave us wandering blindly. He gave us guidelines. He gave us this code of conduct. So in Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defines guidelines for business or financial dealings. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam practically displayed it to us. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam practically, he told us and showed to us a lot of things, what is permissible, what is not. The scholars throughout the history, they have lived it. They have been businessmen, they have been entrepreneurs, they have been dealing in financial transactions, and they have lived it, and they have shown us what is permissible and what is not.
Correct. On that point, I'll just hold you. Please join us after this short break. Assalamu alaikum and welcome back. Obviously, we touched on quite a lot in the beginning, and now obviously we're going to continue showing and highlighting the business ethics from an Islamic perspective.
Yeah. So if we were to begin, number one would be fairness and equity, fairness and justice. So say this principle has to be kept in mind, and this principle has to be followed. You have to be fair and just with whoever you're dealing with. So say business is not just I myself alone. Business is I might have a partner, a co-founder, I have my client, I have my customers, I have my dealers, I have my distributors, and so on and so forth. Whether it is service, I have my employees. The first principle, of course, we're not going to discuss all the principles, but we'll just highlight what are important: fairness and justice. So whomever you're dealing with, you have to be fair and you have to be just. It cannot be that, because I didn't like something, so I go my way. You have to be fair, you have to be just. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, O you who believe, keep your covenant, keep your promises. So keeping a promise in Islam is very essential, extremely essential. And it's defined by a contract. So say now, I have a contract with my partner. I'm not supposed to go against that contract. Whatever permissible things are defined, I have to be fair and just. Irrespective, later on, if I say, no, I don't like this anymore, and I don't like him anymore, I can't do that. At first, if we have agreed upon a contract, there is a contract, one must follow that. Similarly, whether it's employees or your partners or your customers, you have to be fair, you have to be just. And this is what defines our business, and this will define our success. So if a person is, deceiving people, he is coming up with fraudulent strategies, and he's trying to cheat and deceive people, this will not bring him success. Or even if he tastes some success here and there, he will be accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
That reminds me, if we look at history, and we know that one of the most populated Muslim countries in the world is Indonesia. And we look at places like Indonesia and Malaysia and previously the Philippines and many of those, even parts of China, we find that Islam didn't enter them, as we always hear the story, by the sword. Rather, it entered by the Muslim merchants. And many people were impressed by their business ethics.
True.
To the extent that they would sell something that had a small crack that wasn't visible, that they could easily sell it, keep quiet. That person may never notice the crack, may notice it after 1 week, and the person could say, hey, that was 1 week ago, sorry. And it could have happened any time. But they would say to them, this is this. However, I've made it this price because there's a small crack on the bottom. And they would be amazed by their honesty. And they would say to them, like, usually people don't, why are you doing this? This is our religion. We are taught. We have to be honest and just. And we cannot rip you off, as they say. And this is how all those people became Muslims, from the Muslims' ethics and acting and in everything in their life, as well as the trading, because they essentially went over there, many of them, as traders.
True. And this is a beautiful example which you gave. So our da'wah and our preaching can also be through our business transactions. And this is a practical example as to the people. They were so impressed, like, why are you doing this? Why are you as we'd say today, exposing your own self, exposing your business? Why are you not hiding your defects? And they were like, this is Islam. We have to be true and honest. And people in numbers, they accepted Islam. And we know through historical evidences. So this is what fairness and honesty and, being just brings. It brings barakah. It will bless your business. You might see from a very shallow perspective. Person might see, why should I be just, if I don't tell about my defect, I can just sell it off and I can move away. But this is not how it works. And even now, today, these, as we said before, these ethics are incorporated, in business schools, that you have to be fair, you have to be just, you have to be honest. And we'll see a practical example, which the Prophet ﷺ gave to us, that once when he was passing by from the marketplace, he saw one of the Sahabi, he was selling food. There was a pile of food. So the Prophet ﷺ, he put his hand at the bottom and it was wet. It was wet and it was like spoiled. So the Prophet ﷺ told him, why have you kept it here? What is this? Why haven't you kept this on the top? He covered it with, the dry food, the good one, and the bad ones were down. So he told me this has got wet. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever deceives is not one of us. So we see this type of deception is not acceptable.
Also good to mention about this, because these hadith come up a lot. When we see this hadith, we see many of the hadith that says whoever deceives is not one of us, laysa minna, these kind of wordings. It's first of all, as the scholars have said, whenever the wording is used, it doesn't mean obviously that person leaves Islam. It means that they do not have the true and complete iman. It means their faith is lacking. And it also means, the scholars have said, that whenever you find these hadith, laysa minna, or he's not one of us, he's not from us, or whoever does this is, the Muslim does not do such and such, the scholars say this means that it is classed as a major sin as well. So we just wanted to highlight to the users, when you hear these things like whoever cheats is not one of us, it means that this person is not having the true, the perfect faith. Still a Muslim, but he is falling short in his level of belief and his level of faith. And also those hadith, anything that relates to that, so cheating, deceiving, all those things that mention is not one of us. Or la yu'min.
That's right.
He does not truly believe. The one who goes to sleep with a full stomach while his neighbor is hungry. Or the one who does not keep his neighbor safe from his noise and troubles and makes a lot of noise and argues with his neighbors, and his neighbors never feel comfortable when they're living next to him. It says he doesn't believe. All of these show that their faith is weak, and that any of these things that mention these kind of things, that they are major sins. That's a point I wanted to mention there.
That's right. And this again shows us, like in modern terminology, how we care for the one who is dealing with us, the customer or the client. As one of the billionaires now, of course we don't want to name him, he came up with this idea of customer-centric strategy. So everyone after that, started, following it, and everyone has this now in their, strategy that we are very customer-centric, we are client-centric. And subhanAllah, when we see this hadith and similar, we come to know the Prophet ﷺ is teaching us that we should be, caring for our customer, for our clients, and not to deceive him, cheat him, or sometimes, people, they don't just sell you a wrong product, but they deceive you in other ways. Maybe the value of that product is not that much, and he might, just sell you something which is not worth it, or which might not be coming from the official distributor, and so on and so forth. And this is also happening a lot. So we say that one must be fair, he must be just, and he should take care of all whom he's dealing with fairly. Not just seeing his immediate gain or immediate profit, but he should see the wholesome picture as to how it will benefit the society, my clients, my partner, my employees, and so on and so forth. Principle number 2 is legitimacy. So now, when we come up with a business, or when we are running already an owned business, it has to have a legitimate product or service. So whatever product we make, or whatever we are selling or dealing in with, or a service, it has to be legitimate. It has to be permissible according to Sharia. So you can't sell something which is intoxicating, harmful to other people. This is not permissible, and these are business ethics which Islam defines. You cannot sell something which is, say, like as we described earlier, alcohol, or something which involves fawahish, immodesty, immorality, say pictures and videos, and so on and so forth. Recently there was, one of the very famous actors in a talk show. He described, and he's considered the top in the industry. He called some people and he described, and he himself showed it to everyone, that how the wrong messages which are given in many movies and films is having a bad impact on the youngsters. Like they become loose, they become, they mistreat the women, and women are degraded. He himself said, and he said, this is my responsibility to make it reach to everyone from the industry, from director, producer, actor, actress, that, we shouldn't be showing such unethical behavior in films and movies. And this is something, which we must consider. So, like whatever industry it is, it has to fall in the ethical, say, definition of Islam, that shouldn't cross the lines. And similarly, another aspect of it is that we cannot become a part of it. You cannot help someone who is doing an illegitimate business or a financial transaction in that. So say, for example, you might be a developer, web designer, mobile app developer, which is good, which is permissible. But now you get a project for something impermissible, design an app or website, say for an alcohol brand, then this is not permissible for you to take up, or this type of dealing and transaction under the Islamic guidelines is not permissible, because there is a principle, ta'awanu ala al-birri wa taqwa wa la ta'awanu ala al-ismi wal-udwan. This is taken from the Quran, from Surah Ma'idah number 2, that help you one another in goodness and piety and taqwa. Do not help one another in sins and transgression. This is, the principle which we should go by, which we should abide by. Similarly, if someone, say, is helping the other person, there are maybe two organizations, and therefore Islam is, a religion which takes care of the needs of the society. So say, for example, there are two organizations. One is going bankrupt. The other is well off. Now this organization number B goes to number A and asks for a loan. They help them, but with heavy interest. This is something where they are taking undue advantage of, organization B. So Islam tells us they help them and they help them come up. Give them loan without interest, help them in some way or the other, and this is what Islam says. Through this we see the khair in the society. Not that we take undue advantage of someone's needs. Someone is oppressed, someone has gone bankrupt, maybe incurred a heavy loss, and then we come in the picture to make profit out of, lending the money and taking heavy interest on that. This is something, again, which is unethical. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the Quran in several places. We've heard this previously in khutbahs and lectures, that how serious riba is. That the person who indulges into riba, he will be like a person who is hit by shaitan on the day of resurrection. He won't be able to stand properly, like shaitan has hit him. And the Prophet ﷺ also mentioned in an authentic hadith that the one who gives riba, who takes riba, who writes it down, and who becomes a witness, all four of these are same, and on all four of these is the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
And we see that there are Islamic solutions, like they call it takaful, where people, the Muslim or the community, they all put a bit of money together to give to these kind of people who at times who
it's helping each
so
other.
It's
Yeah.
takaful. It's like it's like a bit like the co-op society kind of theory, where everybody purchases from that co-op, but at the same time that co-op then gives back to the community in the form of yearly shares or yearly rewards, because they are all, so it's called like a takaful kind of thing. So, where everyone puts money in. So someone needs, for example, so you have something like, even now some insurance companies, etc., they'll try to adapt this takaful way of providing insurance. Like money is given by the community, and then that is put back into the community in the form of such things.
Yeah, that's right. And again, so the principle over there is that, we help each other. We, let the other person come out of the problem and come out of the difficulty by providing help from our side. And
I'll just hold you on that point, inshallah. We're going to go for a short break. Join us after this break. Assalamu alaikum, and welcome back. Obviously, before we just touched upon, and we discussed about the fact about interest and how there are other solutions that can be, more ethical, of course. And then we'll try and fit now what we have left in this last session.
Yeah, that's right. And apart from, say, interest and riba, there are also severe warnings given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as to eating up others' property unlawfully. So now again, sadly, we get to hear, Fulan company, took investments from the investors, in return for, say, maybe a property, a house, a land, and they close the company, run away.
We have these Ponzi schemes and these pyramid schemes. They're very famous. So we have seen in the past, there's at least probably a couple that we can think of, who were from the top of society, what they were thought to be of the best and top businessmen, some of the best or with the best in the whole world, and they turned out that they were basically, Ponzi, taking people's money, that they were just taking money. So they were rich from basically stealing other people's money, making those people think that they've invested in things. When in reality, those millions they're just living off, and they're buying houses and private jets and stuff off the millions that they've taken from other rich people or clients or businessmen, by pretending that they have such a, have a business going. And we see these, and this is Serious, serious matter indeed.
That's right, and it's like eating up the fire of hell. I mean, it's so serious. I mean, this could end up a person in hellfire, eating up others' property unlawfully. So it is not just, stealing is not just that, you go, eating up others' property is not just that you go and you steal from their, say, bank account, or you steal from their house. I mean, if you deceive someone to the extent that you're going to win this person, and subhanallah, recently I had also met one of the shuyukh, who had his life savings invested in a place, where he said, I trusted, and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, what he finds, that he loses all his life savings. And, this was really sad to hear, because, what people do is they gain the trust of other people, and then at the back of their mind, they know we are going to cheat them, we are going to deceive them. Nothing is going to come out of this, whatever, business plan or business model. And this is very sad. This is like eating up others' property unlawfully. It's not just that, you steal, because what we think is that it's just the stealing. It's just, orphans' wealth given to us, and we shouldn't take from that. It is these, dubious schemes, and these schemes which are Ponzi, and which are, not, say, ethical. These must be avoided, where people, take millions and millions, and then next day, everything is shut. They run away back. Subhanallah, may Allah protect us from that. So for us, when we're doing business, we have to be transparent, and we have to offer value for the money. Like the Prophet ﷺ said, the wealth of a Muslim is sacred. Like we cannot acquire the wealth of another person, unjustly. It's sacred. It's like the blood of a Muslim, the wealth of a Muslim. All these are sacred. We can't just, eat up others' property and saying, it was just a business deal. And sadly, this is what we must be aware of. Apart from, we don't lie, we don't cheat, we don't even deceive a person to the extent where, we eat up his property and he loses everything. Moreover, as Muslims, in our business models, in our business transactions, we should always make sure that we don't harm the other person. So the Prophet ﷺ said, the best of you are those from whose tongue and hands the other people are safe. So we don't harm other people through whatever model we have, through whatever business transactions we are doing. We have to be transparent, and we have to take the responsibility of whatever we are doing. Therefore, the Prophet ﷺ, in one of the hadith, he also described that you cannot sell something which you do not possess. This is a standard principle. You have to define, what is this? What are you going to sell? You have to show, you have to own, you have to possess. With some few exceptions, one has to have the possession of the product. And therefore, the gharar, the doubtful things should be avoided. As to, say for example, I come up to you and then say, I have one product which looks like this, and it's like this, and I take money from you, a heavy amount. And then the other day, you find that I give you, it's completely opposite. It's not even near what I defined. So these are things, which Islam already defined as unethical. Like, don't get in the trouble, prevention is better than cure. Alhamdulillah for Islam, that you cannot sell something which is, just in the air, you just give definitions out of your mind, and that's it. And then you take money from people. And sadly, in the business world, this is also happening. The Prophet ﷺ said, the seller and the buyer have the right to keep or return goods as long as they have not parted or till they part. So over here we see the mutual consent between the buyer and the seller. So alhamdulillah, both have the rights. As far as they have not parted, as far as the deal is not done, the buyer has the right to inspect, to check, to know about all things about the product. And the seller, it's his responsibility that he should define, he should show, he should tell everything about the product. If it's defective, tell him. If it's whatever, made in here or there, he should tell him about all the details. And this is how Islam protects both the buyers and the sellers. Now, one point which is essential and important for us, especially for the upcoming entrepreneurs and businessmen, is that our provisions, our rizq is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what we should keep in our mind. We put in our efforts, we put in our skills, we put in our talent and everything. But at the end of the day, we should know that rizq comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you find a 20-year-old young boy who's not who's a university dropout becomes a billionaire. And someone who's skillful and PhD and has developed a lot of businesses, he might not be a billionaire. He's not in that position. So this comes from Allah. And we know that it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even wealth, when it is given, it is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Prophet ﷺ described in one of the authentic hadith that every ummah has a trial, has a fitna. And the fitna of my ummah is in wealth. So therefore, it is very important for us to know that rizq comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we will be accountable on the day of judgment as to how did we earn it and where did we spend it. And I believe we have done a whole episode on this, about the hadith, where a person won't be able to move his feet in front, the son of Adam, he won't be able to move his feet until he tells to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala where did he earn his wealth and where did he spend it, these two questions. So we need to be very careful. Rizq is from Allah. We strive hard. We implement the Islamic business ethics. We put in our skills and talents, wherever we get it from. We gain knowledge. We try to be as skillful as possible within the Sharia guidelines. Alhamdulillah, it's good. But ultimately, we should know that rizq comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't need to go so far that we do haram things, we indulge into haram, just to become a millionaire, just to make our business successful. We adopt strategies which are impermissible, which are immodest and immoral. These are things which we have to define for ourselves. As entrepreneurs, as businessmen, it is very essential that rizq comes from Allah. And as Allah mentioned in the Quran, if Allah helps you, there's no one who can overcome you. So if you're sincere, if you're honest, and if you take the right route, inshallah, the help of Allah will come to you. If Allah helps you, no one can overcome you. But if Allah forsakes you, there's no one on this planet Earth who can help you. So no matter, you might have connections with millionaires, with the top businessmen, but if you take the wrong route and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forsakes you, then there's no one who can help you. A believer should place his trust in Allah, so much so that he prefers hunger over haram income. And this is how the wives of the Salafus Salihin were. When the Salafus Salihin, they used to leave their house, the wives used to say, we can stay hungry, but don't bring haram wealth in the house. SubhanAllah, this was the taqwa the women had. And this is what, we inspire, we take inspiration from them as men, as women, that they were so particular that don't bring in haram wealth in the house. We can stay hungry, alhamdulillah. And there are instances, we know Sahaba, they didn't have food to eat. Even our beloved Prophet Muhammed sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were occasions where Mother Aisha said that there was only dates and water on which we lived upon. So you might not get the luxuries of this world, alhamdulillah. But if you are doing your business, running your startup with ethics, business ethics, which are defined by Islam, then inshallah you're good to go. Allah will give you more and more, which you can't even imagine on the day of resurrection. The Prophet ﷺ also said, there would enter paradise people whose hearts would be like the hearts of the birds. This is hadith of Sahih Muslim. So what do the birds do? They put their tawakkul, they go out in the morning, and Allah provides them. They search for it. So now for us, it is essential that we search, we strive hard, and we put our tawakkul in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not that we just sit and we expect that rizq will fall from the sky. This is again an important element, which we all must understand. Rizq is from Allah, but Allah wants us to strive for it. Allah wants us to work for it. How do the birds, they go in the morning, they try to search for the rizq, Allah provides them, they come back, with their rizq. Similarly, we go out, we adopt Islamic ethics, principles, our skills, we strive hard, we do things ethically, and we place our trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That Allah is the one who provides rizq. The Prophet ﷺ is saying, such people who have such, say, attitude, behavior, personality, who think like these birds, they will enter paradise on the day of judgment, those who have the hearts of similar birds. Ibn Qayyim rahimullah, he mentions in Madarij al-Salikin that the condition of the one who relies on Allah is like the condition of the one who is given a dirham by the king, and then it gets stolen from him. So the king says to him, I have many of these, I have many from my treasure, so don't worry. And if we can imagine, this person whom the king tells, I have many, don't worry, even if it's stolen. So Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah, he says that, this is the condition of the one who relies upon Allah. Know that Allah's treasures never ends. You did business, incurred a loss, try again. You lost your job, financial problems, keep striving. Have tawakkul on Allah, take the right route, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will be good to go. So these are, some basic ethics which we should consider, before we start up or throughout the process of, starting up a business or running a business already, that our ethics, our morals, our principles should be derived from the Islam, that is Quran, Sunnah, and we should abide by them.
Well, Jazakallah khair for coming on, sharing that with us. And may Allah reward you all for tuning in. And again, we can hopefully take away from this session some of the, as we discussed, some of the important or basic ethics in Islam when it comes to business. And also it sets us a reminder for the future, should we enter in any business deals, transactions, etc., that we should first check, are they in line with and permissible in Islam? And until next time, inshallah, same time, same place, I leave you as always with the greetings of Islam. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.